Okay. Hi, friends. So we are on Steve's channel, but I'm going to be doing the intro. So I think I said that right. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Page Chewing. Today is the first day. I think we have all three of the hosts together, which is very exciting. And it's a very special event because we have Mr. Ryan Cahill with us.
Hey.
Ryan, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you found yourself here?
I'm a little bit sick right now, which is fantastic. But outside of being sick, I also write books. My series, my brain is gone. My English just deserts me sometimes. But my debut series is the Beyond the Broken series, which is a classic epic fantasy. We currently have, I only realized 4 books out on that now, even though 2 main books, 2 novellas, and I'm writing the 5th book, which is the 3rd book. And I'll do a diagram eventually. But yeah, so that's generally me. I'm not that interesting otherwise.
Beg to disagree, but that's okay.
Aww. I only said that so you'd say something nice.
I also see the beautiful covers in the background you have displayed. Said series,
beside
right?
R2D2.
Yes.
And
they
my
are
printer,
stunning.
Which is R2D3. So.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris.
Oh,
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Ready for my own version of the Glorious 12th. And Vicky Guy is here. And our friend Mark Timoney.
Hey,
Vicky,
Mark.
Mark.
Hello.
What's up, Mark?
Oh, I'm so bad at Irish. It's ridiculous. Like so bad.
Really?
We do like a grading system, so like in secondary school or high school, like like normal A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever, and they're broken down into numeric grades after that. So like A1, A2, B1, B2, B3, highest grade being A1, lowest, well, passing being D3, and then we have broken into like an honors, so like you're really really damn good at an ordinary level. So like you're just playing with crayons basically, and then like I've been learning Irish since I was 4. And I got a D3 in ordinary level Irish and an A2 in higher level French. And I'm still shit at French. This is my life.
I took French in middle school. Couldn't even tell you 2 words in French at this point. Like
I think like it's one of those things kind of like I had no Spanish when I went to South America, but like I learned a good bit and I don't know it off the top of my head, but if I took some time to go through it, I'd actually sat down, I'd probably be okay. But right now, no.
Well, French is the second language of Canada, where I live, and I work for the government. And you're supposed to at least try and attempt, if you're not officially bilingual.
If you don't speak French with that beard, I swear to God.
No, I stopped at grade 11 or 12 French, and in my job I try and do the whole bilingual green thing, hello, bonjour, but that's pretty well the extent of my French, except for a few broken scraps. But that's okay. It's all good. I'm also retired, so.
You don't say like a "doué le pamplemousse." That's what we used to say all the time, and we thought we were really cool. In like the equivalent of high school, we said it all the time, which means you are a grapefruit. There's no reason.
I kind of like that insult.
But it's kind of like when you're like 16 and a dipshit. What is your go-to?
You know what I'm gonna need, Ryan? I'm gonna need you to write the insult. You're such a grapefruit, or shut up, you grapefruit, into your series now. Like I'm requiring that you do that at some point. If grapefruits exist in that.
I have a line in my new book that I'm writing now where one guy is talking to another guy, and he's trying to say that he doesn't do something. It's like, oh, there's a bear shit in the woods. And the guy's like, yeah, no, he does. It's like, well then. And then the inner monologue is like, he had a fair idea that made no sense at all, but he was committed to it, so we just had to go forward anyway. And that's the kind of humor that I put in. So grapefruit.
Did you do a self-insert? You just did a self-insert.
I do that all the time. All the time. I pick like 2 or 3 different characters that can take my sense of humor, because if you put it in everyone, then it's the humor of the book. Whereas there's 2 or 3 characters and they're far enough apart that it's okay that I kind of put that sense of humor in just because it's fun. It's really fun to write.
Well, you know what comes to languages too, like the first words you're probably going to know, other than hello, goodbye, are probably curse words that you really shouldn't. Like most languages, like
The interesting thing about Japanese is they have very few actual curse words. They have bad words and they
They
have
just censor
ways
them all
to.
out, do they?
No, they're just roundabout. Like they have a phrase that means not. We can curse, right, Steve?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Just a
Permission
check.
granted.
They have a phrase where they call you the whole shit, not a piece of shit. You're just the whole thing. So it's not necessarily a curse word, but it's very not nice. So the language kind of works around.
I like it.
So yeah,
I like it.
So it's actually kind of worse in a way.
You're not a dickhead.
Yeah.
You're a penis.
right.
Yeah, like you're the whole.
So
You're not just a little tiny piece. You're the whole thing.
you're the whole thing.
Like
you're the
the
whole
bowel
thing.
movement.
You know.
But I
That's
think that works. Like even calling someone a dickhead never made any sense to me. There are people out there that like dickheads, but I don't know anyone. We used to call people bags of dicks. You're such a bag of
Yeah,
dicks.
I've heard of that.
It's like nobody likes a bag of them because, like, one, what are you gonna do with them all? And like, two, it's a bag of dicks.
You'd be surprised, Ryan. People might find uses for that, right? So
Okay, PL. We know PL has an erotica pen name anyway.
I didn't say me. I said people.
My friend might have use for it.
Yeah.
PL Stuart writing his pen 15.
Oh my god, that joke just took me back to middle school.
Oh.
I'm still there. So yeah. Hey,
So,
how do you
Steve,
spell icon?
how's this page doing going so far?
Perfect.
Good,
Yeah.
it's on track.
Well,
It's on track.
you knew it's going downhill with this combination. Not to mention, whiskey.
Yeah.
Well, someone
It's,
told me
Yeah.
that you have a sore throat and you're sick, so you should drink whiskey at 11 a.m. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Green
What do
tea's
you-
almost whiskey, so
No, it's
Kit-
not even close.
you
Yeah.
know what? Hush, Ryan.
No, you can't make
No.
me.
I
What do
actually
you-
literally can't. So
I'll get my
sorry,
mom.
Steve. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna ask what Ryan's drinking.
This is Quail Illa, which is an Islay Scotch, which is absolutely amazing. It is so nice.
Sarah would.
If
be
you're
so
ever
happy
sick,
to hear
drink it.
that.
If you're ever
Noted.
not sick,
I do
drink
make
it.
myself hot toddies when I'm sick.
Oh, yeah.
Those
Hot
actually
toddies are-
really do work.
Yeah, hot toddies are awesome.
Mhm.
Awesome. What are you
You know,
drinking?
you
Steve?
can make them without the whiskey, but why would you?
This has been calling my name for.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That looks like about as much whiskey as PL has in his glass right now.
It is. Yeah, I should just drink out the bottle.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I didn't need
seriously.
to bring the bottle because the bottle.
Seriously, I've never
contents are
seen a
here,
glass
so-
of whiskey that large. Like I could drink a lot of the bottle, but in small doses in the glass.
You're an Irishman. Like what?
You're just pouring a Pepsi there.
I'm stunned. Like I just envision you doing these pub crawls in Ireland, and
You see,
You know,
you gotta be smart about spirits. Like if you drink all of that like really fast as you go, you'll get drunk pretty quickly. Whereas I can drink the whole bottle over the night in smaller increments.
you
It's
obviously haven't
skill
seen
you
me
learn.
drink.
It's practice.
my
It's
friend.
practice.
You obviously haven't seen me drink.
Oh, I will. I will. Someday.
Definitely one of those conventions or something. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am very excited. I'm not going to say dates or anything yet, but I am going to be going back to the States here for not to move, but to visit. So I'm very excited to be on everyone's time zone at some point. I don't
Except
know.
except for Ryan's. Ryan's on no
That's
one's
right.
time zone.
Ryan and I are closer now than when I go back. But
Look, as long as you have an escape route ready on the way back, that's all that matters. As long as you can get in and back out again.
as based on the guidelines right now, Japan has no choice to let me back in, but to let me back in if I leave. So
You're
No,
a
I don't
citizen.
mean Japan getting you back in. I mean America letting you back out.
letting out.
That's the hard part.
That's true.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
Alicia.
Alicia.
How are you?
Alicia or Alicia? I never know. I'm gonna default to Alicia.
We'll have to clarify that with
Chad's the man.
shout out to
Hey,
you.
Shad.
How you doing?
Chris, in Irish, is probably your prayers. And whiskey.
I believe
this
that
early?
needed context.
Yes, it is.
I'm sick, Mark, and that's the excuse that I'm using. So I was told that it's a cure-all.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
Fun fact, in Ireland,
Oh my God.
decades and decades and decades ago, and they probably did it in other countries too, but when babies were teething, they would dip their soothers into whiskey and then put it in their mouth, and it would help to numb along the teeth. And they'd use it with, like, clove oil was an old thing as well, but whiskey was used pretty commonly until they realized it was child abuse.
Slightly concerning, yeah.
I heard in the West Indies same thing, rum as opposed to whiskey, but the rum was the cure all for everything, man. You got a cut, gotta disinfect it. You know,
rum still is the cure all for everything. Just put it out there.
It's true. So Alicia says, I don't know how I'm still alive. My grandmother gave me so many hot toddies as a kid. Good times.
Oh man. Okay, so I have to ask at least a serious question in this whole thing while we're all still.
Yeah, people are watching and they're like, I thought this was about books.
No, not with this group. Not all the time.
No.
Exactly. All right. So Ryan. So congratulations, obviously, first of all, on all the success. And
success.
I'm sure a lot of people want to know, how the heck are you doing it, man? How are you, winning Stabbies, selling 40,000 books in under 2 years, and pumping out 4 or 5 books in under 2? Like, how are you doing all this stuff, man? Best-selling orange tags on Amazon and all the accolades. Every major big booktuber now you'll see them holding up a Ryan Cahill book, or it's on their shelf. You can see in the background. So, how's it going on? What do you do?
Just keep stumbling and keep aiming yourself in the right way. It's always a tough question, because I think a lot of people ask stuff like that, and I think one of the biggest, not a fallacy, one of the biggest things is people always want a silver bullet to stuff. They're always like, I did a whole video with Library of a Viking, and at the very end of it, it was about self-publishing. At the very end, Johan kind of summarized everything, and he was saying, to summarize, there is no one thing. It's an amalgamation of all these different pieces of the puzzle, and all the messages I got afterwards were, if you could tell me one thing you did. And I was like, it's kind of pointless to do that, because it's very hard. I think a lot of publishing is intangible, and it's like my number one word when it comes to this stuff. When it comes to marketing, when it comes to it's all intangible. It's all stuff you do, not knowing what result you'll get, but just hoping. So it's very hard to kind of put one thing and say, oh, I did this. Like, I did a physical art campaign for my second book, where I sent out 60 odd physical arcs around the world to people, like traditional publishers, and I felt that worked really well for me. And I think a lot of my readers got these special edition arcs that are not going to be produced again, and it was great. But can I guarantee that will work for someone else? Absolutely no. And can I pin that was the one thing that helped my second book launch really well? I couldn't at all. But will I do it again? Absolutely yes. So it's a really hard question to answer. I think in general it's just working. It's the answer that no one ever wants. It's just working damn hard, which a lot of authors do anyway. I think when I started this, I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, and I was doing shift work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then switching over to 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And when I do 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I get up at 6, go to work, get home at 7 p.m. I go to the gym, come back and make food. I start writing at 9, and then I finish writing at 3 a.m., 2 a.m., and then I get back up at 6 a.m. and go to work. And it was going to kill me. It wasn't healthy. I don't think anyone should do that. But that's what it took to get that much out while I was still working full time. And I think even now that I'm doing this full time, I don't think I write more. I just sleep more. I just feel healthier now.
So to do that, it took a lot of dedication. What made you have that commitment? When did you decide to write a book and commit yourself like that?
You stole my question, Steve. That was my question. I was going to say, what made you decide now is the time to do this?
Well, I was working, when I started, I was working in a different job, and I was the only microbiologist they'd hired in the world, because they were just introducing a new type of drug, so a large molecule drug, which they didn't have, and they need microbiologists for, but they didn't need me yet. So they hired me 6 months before they needed me. So they put me up in a room, and they just wouldn't give me work. Genuinely would not give it to me. I watched seasons of Netflix. They were paying me full time, and I was just sitting there on my own in the room. And after about 4 different seasons of different shows on Netflix, I said, oh, fuck that. I'm going to write that book I wanted to write. And I just started writing it. And that was that. And I'm kind of like, I always joke when people talk about half-assing something. I say I'm a whole-ass kind of person. Like, I just get really obsessive over stuff like that. And like, at the same time, I'm a magpie and I like jump around and like dart and stuff. And I'm pretty sure, like, my mom works in second chance education, and she was like, 100%, if you were tested for ADD, you would be positive for ADD. You have it 100%. It's like she has loads of kids in the schools who have the exact same characteristics as me in that regard. And but at the same time, then I get really hyper focused on stuff. So that was that. I was like, I'm writing this book, and if I'm going to write it, that's it. And it's just fixating on it. Yeah, it's a weird one. Hyperfixation, it helps sometimes.
I imagine too, though, even if you don't have the proclivity to hyperfixate on something, when you dive into a world as deeply as you did and really immerse yourself, it must be hard to stop, when you get going. I imagine, PL is also an author here. I imagine when you get a story in your head, you need to get it out, I feel like.
Yeah, it's very much that. And I think this is kind of, this story and this world has changed so much since I first started it in my head. And it is one of those things that once I started it, I was just at the computer all day, every day. It happened in the middle of COVID as well. So like me and my partner, we went from being together for like 2 years to then we were living together. We just moved in together and with a few friends. And now all of a sudden we were spending every waking hour together, every single day, every single week. And we have done now for the next 2 years. And because of COVID, she was working on the kitchen table in PR and I was working a foot away from her at my desk every single day. And that would just be me. I'd come in, we'd do our thing, and I'd just sit down, put my headphones on, and that was it. Just disappear into that while she was doing her work and I'd do mine. And yeah, it kind of just became routine. I think that's like, I think I said it a while ago on an interview that I did, and it's something that's kind of stuck with me a long time. My dad is a real, he's a real inspirational guy. He's a guy for those inspirational quotes. He loves them, and he believes it too. And like he used to, like, anytime I played basketball games and we'd have a bad game, he'd come up to me and he'd go, "You remember Man United in the 1999 Champions League final?" And then he'd go on and on and on, and it would, every time. And so I think I kind of said to myself when I started this, kind of off his thing, is that like if I'm gonna fail at this, it's not going to be because I didn't work hard enough. Is that like I could definitely fail, but if I do, it won't be because I didn't put the effort in.
Do you feel
sometimes
sometimes do you feel the weight of success that you have achieved? Do you feel that, not to put even more on you, but you are in a different kind of little stratosphere now amongst indies? Of course there's the Will Whites and all that sort of sales, but in terms of the crowd that I kind of talk to and know and hear about, you're definitely near that top tier. Is there a lot of pressure with that?
Yeah, it's a weird one because I think I don't really view myself as successful. I view myself as like I've done really well and I'm really, really happy with where I've come, and that's great. But I think because of just the situation itself, to me, I'm not successful until I finish the series. Like, because like it's great now, but if I don't stick the landing and close it out, was it really successful? Like if it peters off, and I think most people would be in that scenario if they were in my position. I think it's natural to feel that way. Yeah, no, I definitely do. It's one of those things where I think a lot of people, grass is always greener for everyone. And obviously you want to be in a position where you're selling loads of books, and that's great. But when you're in that position, especially with the length of books that I'm writing, so I think the last one was 245,000 words, and this one is looking to be over 250. To keep that turnaround is quite tough, because Will White's producing a book every year, and sometimes think he might be a little bit more than that, but his books, we looked at it, his first 5 books fit into my second book. So I think that's the difference as well, is you get that frequency of release when you have it's hard to compare it to Will White, he's just a phenomenon anyway. But it's definitely there, that idea that I think when I wrote the first book, I kept saying to Amy, who's my partner, I was like, I should get the second book right. So if I get the second book right, that's perfect. Then I write the second book. I was like, I'm just going to get the third book right, because the third book, I just want to keep going. And I think until I finish the series, I think that's my comfort point there, is finishing the series and knowing that I've completed a body of work. It's definitely there. I think when you're not selling books, it's horrible and stressful, and it makes you feel like you want to give up, because why? I think that can be quite. I hate that for anyone, because I think most people start writing because it's their passion. So, and I think it's a thing that we've done with society, is basically we've been told to monetize everything we're good at, and if it doesn't make money, then we're not good at it, which isn't true. But I think when you do sell books, I've seen it with a few other authors as well who've sold loads of books and they're considered really, really, really successful, but the weight of producing something better than the previous one can absolutely crush people. I think it seems to be really common imposter syndrome in all authors, but I think the difference is imposter syndrome on a smaller scale. You don't have as many people jumping down at you. Like on the big scale, you look at George R. R. Martin, and every time he puts a post about anything, people release the book, release the book, release the book. It's like, how have you not written it yet? How is it possible? I was like, you clearly have never sat down to write a book, if that's your opinion. Because even if he knows the ending and knows every single character and knows every single path, it's very different having it in your head and putting it on paper. So I think he's kind of like the highest profile one. I don't think he hasn't released Winds of Winter because he hates people. I think it's just mentally crushing him. Like, same with Patrick Rothfuss.
Yeah. We talked about that before, and it's just absolutely crazy. Sorry, Taylor, you were saying?
No. I was just gonna say, basically, I think creators like Steve and I, feel the same way. It's not
100%.
only authors that I'm saying that. Probably all creatives is what I'm trying to say. Deal with this feeling, right? Because even when I release a video I'm really proud of, as soon as that video is out, like it's live, I'm already thinking I got to make the next one as good as that one, and it hasn't even met its audience yet.
Anyone in any creative field has that same thing. Definitely 100%.
And then for you guys, sorry, go ahead, Taylor. Sorry. No,
it was just the same thought. So, and then if that video does perform well, then it's more likely that your next video is not going to perform as well as that one, if that's the best one you've done so far. So then you get the inevitable downward votes, and this one's not doing as well. And we've talked about this before, when we get together, but I can really sympathize with the feeling that you're talking about, because it's a continuous creative process. It's not one and done.
And I think with you guys as well, you have such a high frequency of release. It's a different scenario, but the feeling on the creator is the same. Like, I think for me, like when I'm releasing these books, because they're so far in between them, like I get more time to sit down and go through them, and there's more intricacies. Like a 250,000 word book, all these story threads and characters, there's more intricacies for you to try and make something and tweak it. Whereas when you're releasing like this content kind of YouTube, like weekly, some people even daily, or like there's just so much content, you're going to have a lot more negative things just by the nature of the quantity of what you're releasing, which does not make it any easier on you. I imagine that's incredibly tough.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is that I think the trap for all of us creatives, booktubers, authors, is benchmarks. So Taylor and Steve, you passed, you got 1K subs, awesome. It's like, maybe you felt, okay, I've kind of semi-arrived, but then obviously you're looking at some other booktubers like, okay,
5K, 10K.
Yeah, exactly. Like us. Okay, you get a best-selling tag. You know what I mean? I remember when I first made bestseller on my indie publisher, I was like, oh my gosh, and I went straight to number one. But then I didn't do it with the second book. I felt like a failure. You know what I mean? So it's just something that you can really get wrapped up in.
And I think also we live in a world, this is getting really existential, but we live in a world of instant gratification, so I have I think it's kind of thing that's quite nice, but also be tough. I have quite a lot of authors who will message me and email me and ask me like I would have done. I know it's really funny. So I'm friends with Bengali now, online friends. And I talk to him pretty casually most of the time. But before I started, I had actually messaged Ben on Facebook asking him things about ARC readers and stuff like that. Like I didn't know who he was, and now I'm kind of seeing that myself. And I see a lot of newer authors ready to give up. They've released their first book and it hasn't done the way they've wanted, and they're like, I'm really considering throwing in the towel. And do you have any tips? And I was like, it's tough. It's actually, honestly, it's tough for me to give tangible advice because my book did do well, reasonably close to out the gate. But part of that is because of the genre. I mean, like, it's very broad, classic epic fantasy. So it's a much bigger audience. And there's some people writing in much smaller niches, or niches, whatever way you want to. But it's much, much harder to drive momentum there because you just have a smaller pool. But I know from experience with other things as well, and from like everything I've seen with bigger authors and kind of like the research I did before I launched, like you see, Brandon Sanderson wrote 13 books before he sold any of them. And I absolutely hate Conor McGregor. I hate him, despise him as a person. But his coach used a word that I always love called stick-to-itiveness. And I think it's probably the biggest trait in anyone's arsenal, but with authors in particular as well, because you expect, like, if this doesn't sell, I'm a bad author. If I release this, I am just bad. I'm not worth it. I should stop. And it's like, no, there's probably 100,000 different things that will factor into how your book sells. And maybe this time we just didn't do enough of them, or enough of them didn't work or didn't fire off, but that doesn't mean the next one won't. And there are quite a few authors I've seen whose books hadn't sold, and then 2 or 3 years later, like I see, I think Quenby Olson, to say her book hasn't sold is wrong at all. She's a fantastic book, the Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to How to Train British Dragons. I think I mixed that.
Care and Keeping of British Dragons.
There you go. But I know it's had a big renaissance in the last while, and she's got loads of reviews coming in, and the sales are ticking up, and it just shows. Like, Travis Baldree released his book, which really brought about a spark in cozy fantasy, and that has waves. And you'll see that. And I think sometimes people give up so quickly because you put your heart and soul into something, and you're saying, like, a creative. I think all creatives, their self-worth balances in other people's opinion inherently based on what they do. So it's so easy to basically hate on yourself if it doesn't go well straight away. But I think that patience and that kind of, the stick-to-itiveness is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go off the Brandon Sanderson example you made, Elantris was his first published book, and people still say, yeah, that's his worst book. But that was the first one he put out into the world. I love it. But, if you want to base it on the first book you put out into the world, people really are not fans of Brandon Sanderson.
It is a mixed bag for me. The amount of people who will say, oh, it's really funny, because any of the readers go, oh, Darkness and Light is such a massive leap from A Blood and Fire, and it's a great thing to hear. Then I'm like, oh, man, I wish that first book was better. Like, that's the way the human brain is wired. Like, you see 100 good reviews and one bad one, and that's all you focus on. That's it. Like,
I feel exactly the same. And, people tell me, oh my gosh, The Last Event is such a big leap from John Kingdom. And I know how you feel, Ryan, but your first book is always going to be your baby. John Kingdom is my baby, right? So, as much as I know, even in my own head that The Last Atlantis is probably a better book technically and blah, blah, that's my baby, right?
Do you know what it's like? I equate it in my head to the age-old adage, slightly misogynistic adage, that when, like, a woman comes in and you go, oh, you look great. And they're like, did I not look great yesterday? Like, and obviously it's not always true, but the idea being that, like, it actually happens a lot on Twitter. Twitter is one of the worst for it, is that people infer an implication based on what you said and then take that from what you didn't say. And it's...
What was that viral tweet?
Like, I do it all the time. Like you, with your book. Someone says the second book was great and you instantly go, the first book wasn't?
Yeah.
Like,
there was a viral tweet, and for the life of me, I can't remember the actual example used in the tweet, but it was something like... on this app, you'll say something like, I like waffles. And the response will be, so you don't like pancakes? And I'm like, yes, that is Twitter. That is Twitter.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I just want Twitter to burn in a small hole. I love it, actually, like, for interacting with people. But it's when I scroll and the stuff that I just can't. I just can't. I go, what the fuck is this? And like, you kind of want to comment because it's so fucking ridiculous. But, like, I know no matter what I do or say, chances are I'll lose like 250 followers because one person did like waffles, but they thought the pancakes were poisoning people.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to answer Marilyn's questions up on the screen. It's been there for a while. I
Yeah,
just want to know that Rendell and Valdock will have grisly deaths. I'm not sure what book you're on, so I'm not going to ruin anything. I'm not going to spoil stuff. But I like to kill people in books. So take from that what you will.
And our friend Mark Timony is taking notes. Get the second
book right. Well, the way I look at it, actually, the second book, I do think it's quite important because I feel like you see with a lot of series, someone likes the first book about the second book. Okay, someone doesn't like the second book, they can quite easily drop the series.
Yeah.
If someone likes the second book and then finds a slightly disappointing time in the third book, a much higher proportion of people will move on to the fourth book because they're committed to the series. The whole sunk cost fallacy that you put your time into this book and therefore you can't put it away. I think that does hold true. So I do think the second book technically is probably more important than the third, but like the reality is, keep writing good books.
And Wolf Mantula had a question. Did you use the Templar Knights as a template for the Knights of Acreon?
Yeah, 100%. Like I'm a massive history buff, and I say buff. Constantly, actually, do you know what? Scratch that. I think I just sound like a douche when I say a history buff. I really like all forms of classic history, ancient history. Like I took up classical studies as an extra subject in my secondary school or in high school, just outside of school, just to learn it. And the Knights Templar are just such a cool part of history. I don't know why someone just went and goes, you know what, I am going to absolutely romanticize this order. And they're like the Spartans. They just got blown up all over history. But I just kind of, that idea of the stoic knights who are going to do all this and they're going to power through is always something cool. But then you also have that level of religious fanaticism that can, be used to do things.
Just saying, it sounds like they end up in Canada at the end. So there you go.
That makes sense. That's where the Mounties came from.
Yeah. And our friend Chris had a question. Do you think the market for self-pub has changed a lot since you released book one? Similarly, where is it in the longer term?
Yeah, I think it has. I think it's changed a lot. I think it's constantly moving, which is obviously a cop-out answer. But I think it's constantly moving in a certain direction. I think the self-published market, at least one area of the self-published market, I think when we're on Twitter and we're in groups like this, we kind of have a bubble. We have a bias in that, like, people go, oh, self-published fantasy covers are amazing now. The ones you see are, because you might know 50 authors on Twitter, but there's thousands of books released every day. So there's still, to some people, when they go on, they still see a lot of stuff that's not there yet. But I think it's moving where the vast majority of people are starting to see that there's basic levels of stuff you need to have, and that quality of content is constantly improving. But what that does for the market is that it blends self-published and traditionally published books a lot more. You're seeing that, and it was a constant choice for me. Constant, that's the wrong word. It was a purposeful choice. What was the word I was trying to use? I don't know, but it was a purposeful choice to have my covers kind of look like Game of Thrones, Neil Gaiman, kind of symbolic covers that blended in with traditional fantasy, to kind of capture that blurred market where I thought the market was starting to blend, because I was starting to know a lot of people who, I go on tangents all the time, but it's kind of like why people don't get a lot of reviews, and they're wondering why they don't get a lot of reviews. And a lot of the time I'll ask them if they have a section in the back of the book right after the book finishes explaining to readers why you need reviews, and how little time it takes to leave a review and how much you appreciate a review. And they're like, oh, that wouldn't do anything. I was like, well, it does, because a lot of the readers that you're seeing now in the indie world, they're not looking for indie books. They're looking for books. And when you have especially when you're in a blogger market, you know about Amazon reviews, you know about Goodreads, you do all that. But I know when I was reading books, I wasn't leaving reviews, and it was just because I didn't know. I didn't think. And I think that's moving more in the market now. You're seeing this blend of trad and indie where people aren't, because of the jump in quality, and particularly in the jump in the quality of covers, because that's what they see on the Amazon store. I think you're getting a really solid blend of the readership. And if you find a way to capture that and find a way to kind of get the gears rolling for that, I think you can do really well with it.
I think. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
That's a really, really good comment about the reviews. I just wanted to double down on that, because before I started my channel, I did not write reviews. So well, actually, just before my channel, I discovered Goodreads, and then I was doing reviews for myself, not for other readers, just to have a record of what I had read. But if you're not in this world, that's a really good point, that people don't think to write them, even if it's a quick star rating. So I just wanted to like double down on what you said, that requesting a review, I think as a reader would be very helpful, especially if you're not already in this space.
And it's probably one of the number one pieces of advice that I give to any author who asks me about reviews and about books and sales is to do your research. And a lot of times I don't know what that means. When I was launching my book, I went and I bought all the books that were top of the charts in the genre that I wanted to launch into. I bought Dragon Mage, I bought Ascendant, I bought like all of these Dragon Rider books, and I picked the ones that had like the highest amount of reviews. And I read them cover to cover, and I looked at how they arranged their back matter and their front matter, and I went, okay, well, this is clearly working. This book has 2,000 reviews in a year. It's working. So the way they've arranged the things in the back matter, that works. And one of the commonalities that I found in the books with high reviews was they all have really heartfelt messages to readers at the end, explaining why they need reviews, and how them leaving a review will allow you to get them a second book. And conversely, my brain, English, I think it's conversely. A lot of the ones with lower review counts didn't have those things in them. So that's just something that I found when I was looking through.
Yeah,
I didn't know about that either until I started my channel. So
most people don't. Like, you don't think about it, because your natural instinct, especially coming from a trad field, is these books are bought by publishers. They have millions of dollars behind them, and you like apply your Stephen King logic to even like just every trad author. You're like, they're an author, they're published, they get millions. I don't need to leave a review. They have all their advertising budgets. And it's just that kind of fallacy that gets brought out when you see all the big names everywhere.
Especially when you realize that because you're trad published, your publisher is going to send out thousands and thousands of arcs, and you're going to have thousands and thousands of reviews, whereas an indie author may be struggling to get 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 reviews, but are cheering for...
It's honestly the same for a lot of trad authors too. And it's that thing that I think people don't understand, is the misproportion of not misproportion, but the difference in budgeting is that, like, publishers are a business. So they're naturally going to put their money behind something they think they are adamant will sell. The closest thing to a sure thing is what they'll put their money behind. So there's a lot of new authors who come through, and it's kind of, it's sink or swim. They just chuck them out and be like, okay, your job, sell those books. If you sell enough, we'll give you more money on the second book. And that happens with a lot of trad authors. Yeah,
no, you're right. And I really think, you mentioned Library of Viking earlier. He did an awesome video the other day regarding self-published books and whether or not they're what the caliber is, etc. But and while I'm a blogger, I started recently, I give all credit to the Steves and Taylors and Library of Vikings of the world, because what I think the difference now is that with booktubers, you see them hold up Of Blood and Fire, and you'll see them hold up Malice from John Gwynne, and all the books are together on the same bookshelf, and they look equal, quote unquote equal, and the bloggers, the booktubers giving reviews about both books, one, and perhaps they might say this is an indie book, they might not. Regardless, it's also visually putting them on par, and I think that's maybe one of the biggest changes I've seen in the industry that's doing.
The absolute sweet spot you want as an indie author is being able to utilize the momentum of being an independently published author while blurring the lines on the purchasing spectrum between trad and indie. So you want your book to look like a trad book, to have as little barriers between you and the reader as is humanly possible, but while also being able to brandish the fact that you're indie and being able to really utilize that and go like, I think the difference, the way to do that is through reader interaction. Like, that's the biggest thing, like especially with like mailing lists and with all this sort of stuff, is trying to show that you're so accessible. Which a lot of newer trad authors do as well, but I think it was kind of like almost like a hero's thing years and years and years ago. It's just you wouldn't get that kind of interaction with authors.
Bo Kelly had a question. Ryan, I understand why you hate Connor, but the real question is, how do you feel about his whiskey?
So his whiskey is actually made by Bushmills, so it's good whiskey. So he's a dipshit, but he's just basically put a different label on Bushmills whiskey. So it's good whiskey, unfortunately.
And Chris has a great point. The first book has to be pretty good if they decided to read the second.
Yeah, like, I thought that too. But even I saw quite a few different reviews. People, and it's actually like a thing of pride. When you see someone leave a 3-star review on book 1 and a 5-star review on book 2, you're like, have a convert. Yes. Like they actually tend to be some of the most dedicated fans because they're like, oh, I see what you did. I see how you improved your craft and how you leveled this up, and I love that. And then they get really into it. Like, but yeah, I thought that too. But
And our friend Lana, one of the Avengers.
Lana, hi.
You have to kill them.
Do you have to kill some of the people so brutally though?
It kind of depends. And it's like a while ago, we were talking, so I have my Discord, and we have like spoiler sections and stuff, and people were talking about character deaths. And like, there was a suggestion that there's like a love interest for one of the characters. Like, oh, I think what's going to happen is you're going to kill this love interest off, and get this guy to fight this guy. And I was like, it's one thing that I won't do. I was like, I will absolutely kill a love interest off to inspire someone else, but only if that love interest is a character in their own right. So that love interest, I think that's the difference when you think that term fridging, is that it's when you introduce a character just to motivate another character. And I think a lot of the time, especially on Twitter and stuff, the discourse is a bit fucking stupid, to excuse my French, because it's black or white. You can't
now excuse your French.
Yeah, but you can't do this. You're not allowed. You can't do this. You can never kill a character to inspire another one. I was like, no, that's fucking ridiculous, because that's the way real world works. Like, if someone harms your family or it makes you angry or it makes you sad or it gives you a reaction. But I think the difference is in the depth you give that character. If you are making that character just to motivate someone, then it's cheap. But if you have a character that you've poured love into and you've given time on the screen, and they're a character in their own right with their own motivations and their own complexities, and that character happens to die, there will be other characters who are motivated by that death or crushed by that death. And sometimes, Lana, it does have to be brutal.
And Marilyn, referring to her question earlier, I didn't think you could answer that.
Neither did I. Look, like I said, I'm not actually giving you anything on it. Just that one thing is for sure, I'm not George R. R. Martin when it comes to killing people, but I have no problem with killing characters. So if it makes sense, I will never kill someone just to kill them. Like, if it's a logical part of the story, then it's going to happen.
Yeah,
I just have to say, if anyone pulls this out of context, it's just Ryan admitting that he might be a mass murderer in real life. Like, if you take it, that whole conversation, because at one point you said people instead of characters. So I have no problem with killing people. It's like, if someone flips that, oh no.
You got to do field research though, right?
Yeah.
So you scratch that from the
right what you know.
Script. We'll take that out in post.
Right what you know.
Right, you know.
Our friend Andrew, Ryan, don't die, drink whiskey.
Andrew.
A true member of the Whiskey and Books group.
Yes, indeed. Lana, that's why I like Kindle. When you finish a book, it automatically prompts you to leave a review, and at least a star rating.
It's kind of a weird thing where, like, I'll see people on Twitter and authors, and they're like, "Oh, I hate that people can leave just a rating and they won't leave a review. I want to know," especially if it's like a 1-star. Like, I want to know why. It's like, why do you want to know? No, take the damn review. Like, as in, those ratings are important. Like, definitely take them. If someone wants to leave me a 5-star review or a 1-star review or whatever review they want, and they don't want to leave a reason, that's totally fine. You're taking your time with your day to leave me a rating, and like, that's it. That helps. 100%.
Those things are golden, absolutely golden. Yep. It can help someone who one person's 1-star, another person's 5-star. They see someone's like, I'm intrigued now. Why did they 1-star that? I have to read it. Or why did they give that person such a horrible review? But everything they said in their review is what I like that they didn't. Yeah. So I'm gonna go read it. So.
And Alicia's one's an interesting one there, because there's a whole maths thing behind this. So basically, I spent a lot of time looking at this too, because I'm fucking obsessive. But so with Amazon, okay, Amazon isn't a bookstore. It's a shop, and it sells products. You're a product, your book is a product. It grades your books like a product. Okay, and I did this before in an interview on a Discord, where basically I was talking about like a toaster. All right. So one of the things is, a lot of the time, especially as consumers, we look at something and we view 4-star as your bare minimum. Because look at it this way, right? If you have something at 3 to 3.5 stars, okay, like if I go to buy a Hoover and it's at 3 stars, I'm not buying that Hoover, because it very clearly doesn't function. Not the way it's meant to. But that's the way ratings work on Amazon, because it's a shop. And it's what gets misconstrued when it comes over. And it's that you also see people like authors will say, oh, Amazon weights 1 stars more than they weight 5 stars. It's like, no, they don't. Mathematically, they weight them exactly the same. But the difference is because of our perception. So our perception is that the real middle ground is 2.5 stars. Okay, but our baseline acceptance is 4. And also, if your book drops below 3.6, you can't use Amazon ads, right? So every 3-star review drags your book closer to being unadvertisable. And it's a weird one. It's a strange dynamic in that 3.5-star reviews are totally warranted, logical, make complete sense. Like they're the most wildly varying reviews. I've seen that. Love this book, 3 stars. Hated this book, 3 stars. Just like PL was saying. But it's a weird thing with perception, whereas I think people look at it and anything below 4 stars, even though anything below 4 stars is still has the potential to be a fantastic book in a reader's opinion. From Amazon's perspective, it's a subpar product. And it just has to do with the way Amazon markets stuff that people look at it really strangely. But like some of my favorite insights for reviews, I know reviews are for readers, but I like to read them too sometimes. And some of my favorite ones come from 3 and 3.5-star reviews. Absolutely. But it's just that weird perception thing because of Amazon.
It's interesting hearing you talk about the Amazon perspective, because for me, maybe it's just because of the type of reviews that I do. I always think review Goodreads, which technically is Amazon, but it doesn't get posted under the product, right? So it's on Goodreads, it is a different world. If I see a 3 or 3.5, 100%. I'm like, yeah. Okay.
But that's average on Goodreads. And that's quite a direct comparison between Goodreads and Amazon. You'll see many massive books with 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, and it's actually the quantity of those reviews that are helping you. And the quantity works too on Amazon, but it's a really good comparison in that dynamic, is that you see 3.5 on Goodreads, still a great book. You see 3.5. If you passed a Kindle book with 2,000 ratings on Amazon and a 3.5 average, you probably wouldn't give it your time. Most people wouldn't. And mostly because, there's only so many books to read in the world. And I know a lot of people say they don't look at reviews and ratings, but like it's the quickest way for us to kind of have a general gauge of the book.
Which if you think about it, is absolutely wild, because first of all, on Goodreads, your mother can leave a review on Goodreads and give you a 5-star review. And, people will, if she say your names are different, and no one will think twice about it, right? And also on Goodreads, you'll see a lot of fellow authors will read your book and review it on Goodreads. But on Amazon does this thing where because their mandate is Goodreads is for readers and Amazon is for purchasers, as Ryan has indicated, that they have this thing about collusion. Oh well, you're too closely associated with this person, so we're going to remove that review, that glowing review, because we've done our research on social media, and they're your mother, your brother, sister, your close friend, your whatever. And in other words, they can't like your book and can't leave a review. Maybe even if they legitimately did, it's just that Amazon's perception is that it's some kind of collusion, and you're manipulating the algorithms by having these people your friends, read and review your books. But on Goodreads, nobody cares, and that contradiction is really.
I think the difference, though, as well is that a review on Amazon holds a lot more power, and the reason it does is because a review on Amazon, the difference is, if you're in a shop, and the far side of the shop is a chocolate bar, all right, there's a certain mathematical probability of you buying that chocolate bar. That's a Goodreads review. You might pass it, but you have to get it all the way over to the counter. But if you go to the counter, and at the counter where you're buying something else is a bar of chocolate sitting beside it, the probability of you buying that bar of chocolate is a lot higher. So it's the same with Amazon. It's directly under the buy button. So it really does have that massive difference. It's a totally mental difference, but it does there's less obstacles between the reader of the review and the purchase button.
No, agreed. I can even envision a time where Goodreads removes the buy button, the Amazon buy button from Goodreads, because I heard somebody I know who used to work for Amazon say that they are really, really wanting to make Goodreads more of almost like a library type function, as opposed to, like as you said, Ryan, Amazon's about, it's a product, right? So
that's why I'd be very surprised, because anything that drives traffic to their shop, they want. So they might do it. It would just seem strange from a business perspective.
I agree. Totally strange. I agree. I don't think that preserving the purity of Goodreads is going to be enhanced by
nothing pure about Goodreads.
but who knows, right? This is the book industry is a weird thing. It's changing so constantly and so rapidly. So
my big concern, genuinely no joke, my big concern is what goes on in America, and solely because what's going on right now, Amazon is all based out of America, and if a lot of stuff does change and does happen, there will be a huge dynamic shift, especially when you have people like with Trump coming in. A lot of his policies have to do with money leaving the US. There's a lot of stuff that people aren't thinking about, mostly because the stuff that's happening right now, our money is not a concern. You're sitting there and you're going, there's human rights issues, but that is a side effect if it goes a certain way. It's strange how much of a massive stranglehold, because Amazon and all are based out of the US, that it actually has on a global economy for people like authors and royalty systems.
And Mark Timony and Ryan might die drinking whiskey before noon.
It was one glass. It might be a second one soon though.
If it was a PL size glass, maybe, but no.
Yeah, that's a serious glass.
I'm serious about drinking whiskey.
What do you have in PL?
This is I don't have the bottle. It's Wolfhead. It's a local distillery in the Windsor, Ontario area. Great, fantastic. Their flavored whiskeys, like their caramel, their coffee whiskey, chef's kiss, to die for. It is just fantastic. But this is
I remember you posted the bottle.
Great stuff.
Yeah. I'm so jealous. Just gonna sip my green tea in this corner.
I'm just reading Nathaniel's question now. That's an interesting one, because I actually find it more bold to start a book. People have these big time gaps between books, and I'd be like, I find that more challenging. People have time gaps between these books. Now, there's actually about 4 or 5 days between A Blood and Fire and A Darkness and Light, but the scenario that they're in is there. But I think it would have been very strange if I had moved on a lot further. And I think some people do that. They make like 6 weeks or a month or a year. And I'm like, well, what happened in between, guys? What happened in between? I need to know. So yeah,
it can be a risky choice to do that. The one series that I've read that I think does that to perfection is the Greenbone Saga. The Greenbone Saga jumps over large swaths of time, which can be really dangerous if you're attached to a character in one series and then they're older in the next one, or closer to the grave, or maybe in the grave, by that point.
And Red Rising as well. But I haven't got to read them. I haven't got to read either of them, but I have both of them here. So I need to read
Greenbone Saga is a masterclass in fantasy. It is so good. And even though there are those large time gaps, it worked for the story. Like Fonda Lee really made that work for her. But I agree that it can definitely be a risk,
I would even just
reader,
think it's
I'm
more
like,
of
where
a
are
risk.
we now? Yeah.
It's more of a risk than, so like Nathaniel was saying there, that it's bold to start Darkness and Light in the same scenario. I would almost say it's definitely more of a risk than it would be to just continue from where it is. And even it's not a massive spoiler, but going from the second book into the third book, like I have a prologue, but the first main scene is like seconds after the last scene in book 2. And just because I left it at a position where like to skip over that next part wouldn't make sense. Like, there's something about to go down, and like you want to see what happens. So yeah, I find it much harder, and that's why I'd be very impressed. I want to read Fonda Lee's books, because I always find it incredible when authors do that, because it's an incredibly powerful tool when you can use it, because you can create like years of backstory, character development, skills, and if you do it right, it pulls off amazingly.
I would say for me, what made this work for me as a reader was the character work put in before that. So if you can fill in the gaps yourself, so clearly this character had to make choice A, B, and C to get from this point to this point, between the 2 books. But because the character work and the internal world was so consistent, I could imagine the character making those choices. This is what they would have done. This is what they would have done. I see how they're here now. right? So it's not, it lets you fill in the gaps, and you can fill in the gaps because you can
That's the epitome of good character
what the
work.
character would have done. Oh, her characters are phenomenal. So I think that's why it works so well.
Like the amount of time I spent sitting there, I've spent hours sitting at my computer, staring at the screen, being like, I need what happens next to be logical based on what this character would do, but it also needs to achieve the thing that I want. So I'm kind of like, what the fuck do I do? Oh, actually, yeah, no, I agree with what Nathaniel said there, and that was a conscious thing. So like the end of book 1 has a battle in a certain city, and then it goes in media res straight into, basically there's another battle on the horizon, and it comes straight into that battle in the middle of it, shit going down, going crazy. But it's the fresh challenges is that what they were facing was different, and the style of the battle is totally different. I actually, to be totally honest, I hadn't thought about that until I just read that question, and it makes a lot of sense. that was a bit riskier than I thought it was.
That actually sparks a question. Oh, sorry, PL. Did you want to go first? Oh. I had a
He's muted,
question for the authors in the chat, so for PL and Ryan, but as a reader, obviously, the beginning of a book is what grips you, right? So you talk about the hook at the beginning of a story. And some people go for prologues, some people jump right in, right? Or prologues of prologues if you're Brando Sando, right? So there's lots of different ways to start a story. But I'm curious for you guys, what made you decide how to start the story? Like, some people jump into the action and throw you right in. And as a reader, you're like, okay, this is the pace we're going with, right? Some of them use the prologue to set up the scene, right? One of the best prologues I've ever read is actually from Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. That prologue it's incredible. And that prologue specifically talks about an event that'll happen in the future. So it kind of dangles a carrot for you, like, we're going to get here, so I'm just curious how you decide to start a story.
Do you want to go first, PL?
Sure, okay.
He's like, yeah, whatever.
No, my prologue, which Steve and Taylor both read, I want to make sure that we understood the main characters' feeling about what they've lost, the fact that there was going to be a tearing down of things and a building back up. And in my prologue, I wove some Easter eggs that someone may read it in the first book and go, that's really sad and that's too bad, and I'm hearing other characters feeling. But so many things that he says are things that you won't really pick up on until, as the series goes on, they wait a minute. Oh, wow. And then so I put a lot of Easter eggs in my prologue. The prologue doesn't exist to be a big Easter egg because that wouldn't make sense. But much of my prologue is to establish the characters' thought process, the fact that there's going to be a tearing down of things and then a needing to build back up, and the characters, their mindset and their emotional state in terms of most of the series, right? So that's why I wrote my prologue. And like I said, because Taylor and Steve have read it, I think they kind of get that. So, but a lot of things you won't see, you'll go back and say, wait a minute, he mentioned the prologue of book 1, and there'll be little tidbits and breadcrumbs that the series will be like, I get it when you get to the end.
Can confirm.
There's a silence for the thing means it's meant to be my turn.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah. But I think so. Initially, my my novella, The Fall, the first section of that was actually the prologue for the first draft of Blood and Fire, and I read through it and I was like, no, actually, I want to take this out. I think this can be a much bigger thing. And my two books, The Fall and The Blood and Fire, both start off in very different ways. So A Blood and Fire starts off with the prologue, and The Fall starts off in media res, like just fucking hell for leather. And I think to start off in media res, there's one thing that needs to happen. I think the character voice that you're telling that in needs to be really strong, because when you're in the middle of the action and you're losing people and people are dying and there's meant to be heartstrings tugged, if you can't empathize with that character, you've lost the reader in something of that style. So I don't think that works for a lot of coming of age stories where part of the story is the character developing who they are. So at the start, their narrative voice might not be particularly strong. And I think it's weak. It doesn't work all the time. So I think like with my novella, I have 4 different points of view and 4 chapters. And that's what it is. It's 4 complete different jumps, but I wanted to make sure that each one of their narrative voices was as strong as I could possibly make it to kind of allow you to get into it easier. And then with the prologue, I kind of had I look at prologues in like 1 or 2 ways. I think they kind of, a prologue, I hate when people are like, it could just be chapter 1. I was like, if it could just be chapter 1, then it wasn't a prologue. So a prologue should be something that pertains to the story, adds context to the story, that can't be told within the narrative structure of the novel. So it shouldn't fit into the narrative structure of the novel on its own. That's why it's a prologue. So a lot of the time it can be used to, like PL was saying, show what is to come, to add context to what's happening. Like you look at Brandon Sanderson's, the first prologue for The Way of Kings, that gives you context that allows you to understand things as you go. And the same kind of with Dragonmount, with the Wheel of Time, it kind of shows you this epic scale of what's going on. You don't quite understand it at the time, but then as you see what's happening with Rand, you understand where he can go. So I think a lot of the time they will either add part of the story that will help later on, or they add a context or a tone to what to expect. A lot of people sometimes you see people go, oh, my book starts off slow, so I'm going to add in a fast prologue. Like, that's where it can get murky, because if it's not actually adding something to the story other than skipping ahead to show the tone to the reader, sometimes it doesn't work. But for me, from a craft perspective, I think that's how I look at them anyway. Yay!
Hey,
Our boss is here. We better behave ourselves.
yeah.
Actually, no, probably should be.
You know,
She'd probably say, "Don't behave yourselves."
Everyone look busy. Yeah.
You have a boss?
Right. Everyone look busy.
Yeah.
We're doing the work now. We are busy.
And our friend Layla's here.
Hey, Layla.
Hi, Lila.
What's up?
And Drew is just stopping by to say hello. Can't stay, but we'll watch the replay. Hope everyone has a great day.
Nice.
Thanks for stopping by.
I have a boss, but he's a dickhead. Funny joke by
Just
me.
tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
I'm a dickhead.
You guys go be naughty.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll try
Yes,
our best, Beth. I have.
I did want to. Oh, go ahead, Pio.
No, I was going to say I have my copy of The Fall here that I'm hoping to read soon, but I was going to ask Ryan a question.
Yeah.
Is this, and obviously I'm going to buy the whole series. That's my plan and read the year. Is this something I should be holding off on and reading the
Don't
rest
ask me that question.
first? Or
Don't
I am
ask me that
going to ask you. You're the author, man.
I wanted to ask it too, so
Oh,
2 times.
You're the author.
I hate
What's
this
the
question
reading
now.
orders, sir?
Well, yeah. So always going to be the cop-out answer is there's 2. Like I did. I wrote the book with the intention of it being able for it to be read in either order, and I did it on purpose because I wanted to release it as a reader magnet to attract people onto my mailing list after the first book. But then I also wanted it to entice people and let them have a taste of what my writing is like. So I wrote it with the intention that it could be read either way. And all that's happened is it's just started this massive fucking war inside the readership. And I mean, like, I think at the start it didn't matter because not that many people read the books. But now it's fucking bedlam. And like there was an interaction on Twitter the other day, a new guy who was just reading the book and enjoying it. And it's this thing. It's basically when someone picks up the book, like fucking 20 or 30 readers will like comment being like, you read it in the wrong order. And like, that's just it. Just fucking slap it out there. Like no context applied. And this guy, that's, oh, I love this book. I'm really enjoying it. And some guys, oh, I'm glad you're enjoying it, but you read it in the wrong order. And he didn't use emojis. So the other guy was like, fuck off. And that's just constant now. It's all the time. And it's funny. And then it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Children, please control yourself. So I ended up having to write like 2 prospective reading orders into the ebooks. Just so, which is starting to work. So I named them after 2 sword forms that I have. This Fedaria and this Balancir, which are like the Burning Winds and the Lonely Mountain. The idea that is one is blazing and quick and straight into the action, which is the Fall, and one is slow and purposeful, which is starting with a Blood and Fire. and I'm just sticking to that till the day I fucking die, because I cannot draw a line on this.
Well, I think that's really helpful the way you just characterized it, because for me, that just made my choice right now, because I know the type of reader I am, and I like to know my characters. So you know, I was just able to make that choice right now based on the characterization. So.
That's the idea of it, I think. And Zach Argyle actually made an argument the other day, which was actually quite a good one. So basically, which is the opposite. So the idea would be that either book will make the other book better. So if you read The Fall first, you'll have more context for Blood and Fire, and A Blood and Fire will be better than if you read A Blood and Fire on its own. Okay? And if you read A Blood and Fire first, The Fall will be better, because you've heard more about the characters that are going to appear, and you'll get them more, you'll understand more. But Zach's argument was that it's better to improve a longer book than a smaller book. So reading the smaller book first improves the longer book, and therefore he feels you should read The Fall first. And it totally depends, but very much like some people, if you jump into The Fall, some people love the kind of like, oh, fucking chaos, this is cool. It's basically a non-stop 100-page action sequence with 4 different points of view all around the same event and different perspectives that's going on. And for some people, they absolutely love it. And other people, they're like, what the fuck is happening? And it very much depends on the reader, like very, very much.
Okay, well, I think you convinced me too, and I definitely trust the author, and I certainly trust Zach Argyle. So, you know, I I feel like I'm in good stead reading this first. So I'm gonna.
The way it is as well is The Fall was written after Blood and Fire, so like the writing for me is definitely better. It's a good way to jump into it, and the writing is a lot closer. Of Darkness and Light is kind of like the two of them combined. It's kind of like the more epic, larger scope of Blood and Fire, combined with the kind of more improved writing style of The Fall.
And our arch nemesis for the month of July is here.
Diego
Abdallah.
Narwhals.
Team Narwhals.
I think I saw there. He said it's pronounced Chiago.
Oh, okay.
If you've been saying your name wrong,
I would never
us,
ever have thought that, but I'm pretty sure he said it was Chiago.
Oh man.
And if not, then I'm just making fun of his name for no reason. Chiago or Thiago is still a lovely guy.
Yeah, he is. Not for this month, but in August 1st he will be again. Yeah.
Exactly.
I was right.
What do you say?
Saw the comments.
I like The Fall before because it gave me context to some things mentioned before, and Ryan is correct. It's not the whiskey talking. Yeah, TH sounds like CH. Oh.
So there is basically there's a scene in like the second or third chapter of Blood and Fire where one of the main characters, who's a storyteller, tells the story of The Fall. A really brief outline of this is what happened when the order fell. And then when you read A Blood and Fire, you see what actually happens. So there is that. That's why it can kind of be read either way. Isn't kind of like you read the first one and you see what's being mentioned, you're like, oh, cool. And then like there's 1 or 2 of the characters, because my characters, some of them live for quite a long time. They'll appear in the next book, and you're like, it's fucking what's his face. So I don't think you'd say what's his face. That's probably an Irish thing. Yeah.
Well, either way, though, I was gonna say for PL, if you survived the what the fuckness of Death Rider, you're gonna be fine reading any other novella. So.
Yeah. Death Rider was, WTF big time in a good way, but like,
in a very good way. Yeah,
totally. We might have to start doing some deep dives of Ryan's work when we all get it down.
With the Avengers?
Yes, bring it on. Yes,
let's do it.
I think Nathaniel was just saying he wasn't a fan of The Fall, and he's glad he kept reading through, which is that's the way it will always work. Like, and it's really interesting. Like I see like on the Indie Accords, they're currently doing like a read through of Darkness and Light, or like a buddy read of Darkness and Light. And sometimes like I kind of feel like I shouldn't go near any of those things because I want readers to be able to say if they find something shit. Like, and I'm totally cool with that. I think I'm at a stage now where I've seen enough fucking horrible reviews that if someone comes on and goes, I did not like this book, I'm like, that's okay. That's totally okay. You know, let me know. Don't let me know. Put the book down. Go find another book you love. That's what reading's about. Like, it's 100% the way it should always be. And it's like I remember when I was talking to Patrick at the very start when he said he'd take A Blood and Fire and he'd read it eventually. And he's like, I'll get to it eventually. I was like, get to it whenever you get to it. Like, because I think if you push someone to read something, they are just not going to like it. You're just, you feel pressure to read something. Reading is meant to be fun. Read what you like. You never let it become anything other than something you love doing.
Chiago said that was exactly the scene that sold The Fall before to me. And that what's his face finding the last sigil bearer in the woods.
Ah, yeah.
Also, I didn't comment on being an arch nemesis because I couldn't hear the smack talk all the way from the first place.
Okay, look, Esme is carrying your team, and you know it.
Ooh.
Okay, so.
Ooh. Oh, this is some real trash talking. This India course thing is really vicious.
She is incredible. Let me just take a minute to talk about her scoreboard. She read 2,600 pages in the first week, and I was like, "With what time? It's incredible!" Like, she's.
It almost like I can't genuinely, I cannot fathom how people can read that much. And like, I used to think I read a lot, and I did read a lot, but I read a lot less now because I don't have the time. But like I might read like 6 or 7 books in a year now, and that's a good year. And I see people being like, I read 327 books this year. Like, what the fuck? It's insane. There's some unbelievable readers, some ARC readers that I have, and they read Of Darkness and Light in one day. It is 245,000 words. It is like 900 pages. They read it in one day.
Yeah, there's some writing community. There's some, Esme, like even Beth Tabler is quite the Beth Tabler can throw down. I read a decent amount, but nothing compared to I'll read. Right now I think I'm on track for 100 books a year, but there is some. I'm a no, but like
there's one hill I will die on. I love audiobooks. They are absolutely amazing and should always count for everything. How in the name of fucking God people can read them at 3 times speed and say they understand them? I will die on this hill, I will bleed on this hill, and I will fall down this hill dismembered. Because like I've tried, I listened, someone said they read Voice of War at 3 times speed. And I went on, you actually can't even if, and I've heard the argument on Twitter, people are like, our brains are just more advanced than yours. And I'm like, oh look, even if that is true, and look, I am the first to advocate that a lot of the time you will start something and you might not be good at it, and eventually your brain will learn and it will get better. Totally, 100%. But even just from a craft perspective and like a tonal perspective, tonal inflections that the audiobook narrator uses and the way they voice characters, it changes the pitch. Mm-hmm. So when you bring it up to that speed, it genuinely, that's not an arguable thing. And no matter how much you learn to it and how much you get better at listening at that speed, that pitch will not change. So when you increase the pace of a voice to that shorter wavelength, the pitch will rise for everything to like Alvin and the Chipmunks. So I just couldn't see how it would be enjoyable. Like you can do it, you can definitely do it, but like how could you enjoy it? Like I listen to my narrator's stuff. Derek's so good, and like Zach Argyle's guy Adam Gold has the single best voice range I've ever heard in my entire life. Like he is one of the best narrators I've ever heard. And I just couldn't imagine listening to him and just hearing like, it's almost like that Spanish overdub for Wolverine. Don't know if you've ever heard that, like when you do like the dubbed voices for movies. So you have Hugh Jackman, but in Spain or in like the Spanish versions, he will have his own voice actor who always voices him.
Yeah.
All right, so Hugh Jackman is real gruff, and you go to like the Spanish one, it's like, ¿Dónde está Cyclops? It's like, oh crap, that's Wolverine dead for me now.
I have a really funny story of exactly that, but like with my family. So my dad has a really cool job working for the James Webb Space Telescope for NASA. So he's like the manager of that. And so he was on.
Okay, that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. And have you seen the new picture?
Yes.
I've been constantly texting him about that. It's incredible. I'll stop myself. Let me go back to my story. So he had an interview that aired on Japanese TV. And so, of course, my Japanese in-laws and everything were like, oh my God, we got to watch this. When I tell you the voiceover of his voice was like, I know how my dad sounds, okay? But the voiceover was like, hello, my name is John. And I'm like, what is this? Like the intro to a Star Wars movie? Like, why did you put this?
It's so funny when you see it, like, and you do it, especially like, oh man, especially when you know like the original voice. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. This is horrible.
You couldn't have tried just a little bit more, because I know you heard the audio. I know you heard it.
But that's it. Like when you get audiobooks and you slow it down, you'll get like everyone sounding like James Earl Jones. And it's kind of like it takes away the dynamic display of the narrator. Mm-hmm. So like I get people speeding it up. Some stuff can be slow, but like for me, I just like I've never changed the speed of any audiobook I've ever listened to, because like the only reason I would do it is if like I needed to finish for a school project. Otherwise, like I have hours, like I'll just take longer to read the book, and I'll read it the way the narrator did it, because like it's a creative choice that they make to kind of go, I want to read at this pace because I feel like this part of the story should be read like this, and this is the way this person should speak, and it's each to their own. Anyone can do what they want, but like I just can't understand it.
I would hate that for my audiobook. I mean, Steve's listened to my audiobook. The narrator, and especially my main character, like he nails his whole persona, right? And to listen to that speed it up would totally, eradicate, the whole, the ambiance of what he does.
If someone does it and they enjoy the book, that's great.
Yeah, it's up to them.
Like,
but
it's a personal preference. It's like me. I go, oh God. Like I couldn't imagine listening to Zach's book sped at 3 times speed. Not only would I get a fucking heart attack and pass out, like, but it just wouldn't be enjoyable.
No, agreed. It is a personal preference, but I'm just I'm trying to envision it. It's just like, oh, yeah.
It's crazy. I did. You need to do it. Hold on, I'm gonna see if I can, because this is like genuinely funny. I tried to do it before, and especially like I think it's probably different if someone's listening to audiobooks all the time and they're more used to it. But when you just pick one audiobook and then you do this to it, it's interesting. Okay, hold on. This has to be done. All right.
2 couples stood.
Can you hear that?
Eyes eager with anticipation.
All right, wait for it.
Chris and Ariel.
How? And that's actually not bad. I've heard much worse. Like, if you picked up a single word there, you're a better person than I am.
That sounds like the end of a commercial where someone tried to squeeze in, not available purchase in the U.S. That's what
the fine print.
That's what it sounds like.
It's not even bad because Adam Gold has a really deep voice. I think so when it goes faster, his voice goes up, but it still sounds like a normal person. But I think Mark Lawrence's one, there was one, Prince of Thorns narrator. This is where this initially came about. Someone shared this on Twitter. His voice is reasonably high. So when you squeeze it down to that, it's Alvin and the Chipmunks, and it's pretty damn funny.
And Mike from Mike's book reviews is here. Hey Mike, first I've heard of The Fall, but now I'm interested. Ryan's accent helped convince me.
Really? I hate my accent.
And Esme is a wonder.
You're exotic.
Great. Yeah.
It's the way you say "fook."
If I actually say it like that.
And Marilyn has a question. Who's your favorite, Fenrir or Valeris? I'm sure I'm butchering the names.
That could never. That's a question I can't answer. It's not possible. And they were actually talking in the Discord earlier, and they were saying about like character deaths, and because this third book is called War and Ruin, and they're kind of like, I'm expecting it to ruin me. Like there's going to be big character deaths. And I was just like, Fenrir will never die. Put all the plot armor on him you want. He will never die. He is Goku. That animal will never die. I cannot do that to myself. It can't happen. So even if he's on his own, he's the last survivor. He'll survive somewhere.
And Mike said, I take that back. I have Blood of Fire on my Goodreads. Still, though, the accent is winning people over. Chiago says, if it were an intro to a Star Wars movie, it would probably be better than the new trilogy.
Look, I'm going to put it this way. Anything would be better than the new trilogy. So.
And Alicia listens at 1.5. I've tried even 1. I can't.
I think at 1.5, I can see people listening at 1.5, but I just think for me, like I can't. Like I tried. I am because like I said earlier, I'm like a squirrel or a magpie, and like I cannot focus. So audiobooks are tough for me as it is. So because sometimes I like be listening to it, and then 10 minutes passes, and I don't know what happened after the last 10 minutes. So if you go 1.5 times, I'm losing 15 minutes. It's tough.
It's so
Might
interesting
be.
to hear your guys' perspectives on also wanting to hear the narrator's voice specifically. For me, I've gotten so used to 2x speed just with YouTube videos that audiobooks sound normal at that speed. Because another thing of being a YouTuber is you not have to, but you should watch your compatriots' content as much as you can, right? So,
Some
trying to
videos
fit
are
in
long.
all of and I want to watch people's vlogs and stuff, but in order to fit it in between work, I've gotten so used to watching it on 2x speed that now if I listen to anything, including myself, like when I'm editing, like, God, I talk slow, So I've done this to myself, but I'm so used to 2x speed now that 1x is just, it's rough.
I think for me, like the main thing when it comes to like audiobooks, and like when I was given my narrator by my publisher Podium, it was just hearing the way they approach it. Like it's a craft on its own, and they are specifically doing things on purpose. It's a conscious decision that they're making. And some narrators are faster than others, some are slower than others, and it's just one of those where I think for me personally, I always feel like I'm kind of missing something if I don't. It has actually never even crossed my mind to speed it up. Like, and the only logical reason I could ever have thought to speed something up is to get through them faster. And like, I think for me, speeding through books has just been something I've never wanted to do because it feels like I'm kind of, pushing through them to improve my count, which I think is a contentious thing on Twitter and the Twitter sphere and stuff, or whatever, Twitter cube. But that's what it feels like when I'm doing that. I'm kind of like, oh God, I can't do this. Bring it back. I'll listen to it low and slow. We'll walk around. I'll go for a walk around the lake and I'll have a great time. And I'll hear people die in my ears while I look at ducks. It's great.
That is I wanted to bring that up too. It depends on the audiobook you're listening to. If you take a walk or you're out in public, like I was at the gym and I was listening to, oh my God, what's it called? Island of Sea Women by Lisa C. And there is a scene in that book, which is a retelling of a real life massacre, but it is not told that that's in the story. So I was not expecting this. I'm in the middle of the gym lifting weights and all of a sudden this horrendous scene comes on in my ears and I'm like, okay. I'm switching to music because audiobooks, like if you're in the wrong environment, it's really weird.
Now I don't know, I haven't read, is it what? Hand of the Sun King? That
I haven't read that.
Yeah,
so
Great House, is that JT Great House? Is that the author?
No, I think it's
Great
Parker
House?
Chan.
Oh, is that?
No, so Hand of the Sun King is great. It's
Great House, right?
No, it is. Yeah. There's a book recently that has gotten a lot of fantastic applause, and I just know it's like a sapphic book. And another thing recently that I put up on Twitter is that I only realized there's a difference between sapphic and sapphic. I never equate in my head. I used to see this and it's like, sapphic books. And I was like, oh, books that, where people love each other for their intelligence. I said, no, it actually just directly means lesbian books. And I did not realize that at all. But one of the guys was listening to the book and he said there's like a pretty straight up lesbian fisting scene in it. And he was just walking through a park on Audible and he's like, oh my God. He's like, look a child in the eyes and all of a sudden. And it's just
I cannot do sexy time via audio. I cannot make myself do that.
Oh man. Oh.
Epic says after listening to audiobooks, listening on X7 speed, I started talking faster.
You have a galaxy brain.
Like Audible doesn't even allow you to go that high. It only lets you go to 3.5.
Yeah, I think it's really fun.
Crazy.
Having just wrapped up my own audiobook, I feel the same way, Ryan. Seeing the narrator's work, it feels blasphemous to speed up.
Well, I think it's just one of those things. But like a good narrator should be bringing his tempo when he's doing these scenes. And it's one of those things for me is like, genuinely, I've only ever heard of people doing this in the kind of reader Twitter sphere section. I've never heard of it before. And it would never even cross my mind. Like I would never sit down with a movie and go, I need to clock up my movie numbers and I'll just watch the movie and fast forward. Which is what it is. But like if people are comfortable doing it, then that's all that matters. If that's what you want to do it. But I just couldn't. I can't. I was about to say 1.7.
7, like good God, Victor.
I was gonna say,
And
it's inhuman.
and Wolf Manchula put it there. He said, "She who became the sun." That's it. It's
Yeah, that I know.
Loads
That
of
Okay, yeah, I've heard
amazing
that.
reviews.
Yes.
But just
I know
that
that
one
book,
scene, it's like it's not something you want to be looking someone in the eye for when you're listening to an audiobook. Yeah.
Well, I think just speaking of the speed thing, you do have a point though, and you've hit on something that I think it's a repetitive discourse in the booktube community,
Yeah.
but the idea of numbers and the pressure to
It's the
get
same
your
thing we were
numbers
talking
up
about earlier.
because I mean, yeah. So you always
Yeah.
compare yourself to someone else. So you may be proud to be like, I read 2 or 3 books, and then you watch someone else's wrap up, and you're like, here's the 15 books I read this month. So I think it is something that I have to check myself as well, because I do want to enjoy my books. And so
Yeah.
I thought I was a fast reader until I met people like Esme, for example, who's just like a god amongst men. But I have to check myself and be like, okay, you don't need to be a fast reader. It's okay to
What I've
slow
found
down. So
is, especially particularly with BookTube, is the people that I see garner a lot of stuff really fast. Like you look at Library of Viking, he's flown up, and he had a big Instagram following beforehand. But it's the quality of the content, and I think with books as well, what I love is seeing people like Petrick as well. Is that unbridled passion that can't really be put through in written reviews. And I think like if someone reads 5 books, I think Petrick usually reads about like 8 books in a month, which is very fast, but for people in that sphere is average, give or take. Like, but the quality of reviews that he gives and how much work that goes into them, and you can see that passion coming through. And I know even from an author's perspective, I love seeing that, because that's where I get readers. Like if someone goes and says, this book was good, 5 stars, I really enjoyed it, it goes onto a long list of books that are great with 5 stars. But when someone reads this passionate review that kind of goes through all these things that I love and different aspects, and I find every time someone leaves reviews like that, I will get like little spikes, because people are going, oh, that's exactly what I need right now. So it's always really interesting. I think it's particularly with BookTube. You'll see a lot of really passionate people in BookTube, which is something I love.
mm-hmm.
No, and I think that goes back to the point of too, both in reading, reviewing, blogging, and in writing books as authors for Ryan. I totally respect and envy people who are really prolific, and whether full-time part, they can pump out all these books, quality books, in a very short space of time. I find that now in book 3, I realize that even when I'm retired, God willing, in 7 years when I can hopefully write full time and write, I still think I'm gonna write 1 book a year. Why? Because I do enjoy the process now. After getting through that second book, which was torturous, the whole imposter syndrome. Oh my God, second book has got to be blah blah. Third book, I'm actually enjoying it now.
Oh man, I wish I hit your standard there. I'm having the most miserable time writing this 3rd book right now.
Well, like I said, pressure, right? And I'm sure maybe, who knows, 4th book I might feel it, but regardless, my point is, and when it comes to reading, I can have a month where I have a great reading month numbers wise, but when I, quote unquote, sit back and smell the roses and read like maybe 4 books and they were amazing, I got to savor them, and I'm like, I could go back and reread that special passage. Those are the months that I really treasure now. So I'm really kind of, maybe it's an age thing, great, but I'm slowing down and enjoy the roses, and both reading and writing. And
I am just dying for sending my book off to beta readers so I can sit down and just read. Take 2 weeks and just read.
This is a format that I usually hate when on Twitter, like this phrasing, but let's normalize, people say that. But I do think we should normalize the fact that there are also different types of books. So some books are going to be a quick read. Like I'm reading Legends and Lattes right now, and the speed with which I can blow through that book, and I'm not trying to, it's quick. But if I'm reading Moby Dick, for example, which I've been reading for months now, that book, you're not supposed to rush through a book like that. You're supposed to take your time with it. And I think I've seen a lot of big booktubers put those, not that they can't be in the same wrap up, but they're seen as the same. Like you should read the same amount of whatever genre you're reading in that month. And I really think people need to not recognize, but be willing to accept that some books are just, you need to sit with them. And classics are a good example, depending on the classic. But, you know, like
Yeah.
I've seen people who've read, just looking behind me, like The Way of Kings and then 7 other books. And I don't know how they manage that, but because that's a book that it's over 1,000 pages. You're supposed to.
I'm not gonna lie. My comparison with that would be, I actually read Way of Kings quite fast, and I would almost look at it from a prose perspective, in that Moby Dick is written with archaic prose, and it's not as easy to read through it. And so my comparison would be, I would actually, from a modern perspective, think that Way of Kings is quite a quick read, not lengthwise, but for the length it is quite a quick read. Whereas the direct comparison would be Malazan. So Malazan's written with an almost encyclopedic kind of poetic prose, where it's like, it takes it 10 seconds to realize what the fuck is happening. Whereas like Brandon Sanderson's prose is people say workmanlike, but I would say economic. Like, yes. His prose his storytelling actually isn't very economic at all. But his prose is quite economic. Like the way he works with things, and it's quite accessible in that you can read it, you know what's happening, you finish a sentence, and the sentence made sense. Now, you read Stephen Erickson, you get 2 paragraphs in, and you're like, where am I and what's my name?
Malazan. That's Malazan. And you know, and I said this before, like, and I'm glad you brought that up, Ryan. That, like, you know, as an author, as someone who prides himself in writing immersive, you know, deep stuff, you know, I read Malazan, I was like, wow, okay, I don't get that. I'm gonna have to go back and I don't get that. Oh, where does this come from? Did I miss that? And then, you know, that is a humbling feeling as an author, especially if you go like, whoo.
It depends in a way as well, though, because my only interest in Malazan comes from trying to understand how an author was successful with that style of book. It's trying to understand how an author released the first book that basically makes absolutely no fucking sense, is encyclopedic and really cryptic, and then the second book has a totally different cast of characters, but uses the same hard-to-read prose. Being successful with that, there has to be something that works, so I want to read it. But I read the first 2 pages of Gardens of the Moon and just threw it on the couch. Because I just think at the minute, I don't have the headspace to do homework. And that's what Malazan is.
Yeah.
And while I'm writing, I just can't. I just don't have that there for me.
Well, but
so I might go back to it, but not now.
But that book sold something like, I think it was a million copies in a month. I mean, it was crazy what that book sold. And I have only read the first book, and I'm kind of pacing myself, because even for me, and like I said, I pride myself on writing, you know, I hopefully kind of deep immersive stuff. And obviously people write more deeply immersive books than I do, but I was like, holy moly, right? I feel stupid right now because
I think this is the key imposter syndrome for people who write in our genre. So like, it's like a tweet that I put up a while ago talking about the same thing. I'm saying, I look at Game of Thrones and stuff, and I'm going, you know, why don't I have characters like Varys and Tyrion?
Yeah.
Why don't I have them? Why did I interact this way? I should have them. My story should be complex enough to have them. I should do this. And it hits hard.
Yeah, it does. It
does. To sit back and go, I'm telling a different story.
But now I think though slowly I am starting to appreciate that differential, that hey, I write my book, this person wrote their book, Ryan wrote his book, Zach wrote his book. They're all good. They're just different. And it takes a while to get in that headspace. You're not quite there yet, especially when you first start as an author, because like, ooh, I have to be, you know, and especially, God forbid, when someone compares you to Ryan Cahill, like John Gwynne, blah, 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 like those are those, you know, kind of death kneels of, oh my God, well, I look up to John Gwynne, and you know, I and that's like they're comparing. It's like, ooh, like that little feeling in the pit of your stomach, you know, gets, like, you know.
Man,
but
I read the first few chapters of Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, and I was reading it, and the entire time I was reading it, I was like, I can never be this good. And I've talked about it before, is that some people don't like Joe Abercrombie, and that's totally fine, and it's all different. But there's one thing that I think is inarguable with Joe Abercrombie, is that, you know, he's a master at telling 2 or 3 things at once and having just this inalienable incredible character voice.
Yeah.
So you know what a character's whole backstory is by reading a page of their dialogue.
Yeah.
And that is a master in his craft.
Yeah, he is.
Like whether you like the book tone or not, that is just incredible.
Yeah.
And it took me a while. I sat there and I was like, fuck, I should just quit one of my head. And then I realized after about 20 minutes of sitting there close to crying, that my book is totally different to his. And just my entire writing style is totally different, like completely different. And then when I tried to compare it to someone who's actually comparable, because I am not comparable to Joe Abercrombie, I compare it to like Sanderson or Tolkien, and you realize that if you can put Sanderson, Tolkien, and Joe Abercrombie next to each other, they are incomparable. All three of them, massive, multi-million selling authors, their style is nowhere close, like not even in the same spectrum. So that's why I think it's important to look at that sometimes, and you realize that that's a different storyteller telling a different story in a different book.
And to remember that you can love all three, too.
Yeah, it's also important to realize that readers, we choose books with different narrative voices based on our mood, right?
Yep.
So sometimes I'm in the mood for something prosy and gorgeous. So I'll have all of those authors on my shelf and I'll pick them up at different times. So there's a place for different ways of writing.
It's
There's
a
no
common
one
thing
right
that I
way.
think people forget, authors in particular forget, is that books aren't mutually exclusive and that it's not a competition. Yes, it's a competition to get number one, but your sales are not a competition. Like it actually isn't, like not even directly, not even linked.
Bingo.
In fact,
Bingo.
if you can get your book close to someone else's, their sales bring yours up.
Exactly.
They won't
Exactly.
tank them. Like
Exactly.
it's one of those things, people read hundreds of books a year, some people, so like they're not going to go, oh, well, I like this book, so can't have that one. And that's, if that was the case, you wouldn't see so many people going, hide my credit card because I just ordered 14 books.
Yeah.
Guilty.
The Indo Accords is dangerous. Look, I haven't made my purchases for the Indo Accords yet, but the list of books I'm going to buy in bulk is, Hayato's not ready. Let's just say
Since I came here, I left all my books at home. I was saying to Steve before we started this, because I had to, because they're like a kilo each, and I only had 30 kilos to bring. I needed clothes. So I had to start again when I came here, and every single book I have now is a special edition because I've been more meticulous in my buying, getting what I wanted, but I just waited. And so now I'm looking over there and I'm like, you're so pretty, but you know, I need to get to them. But I just kind of keep
the exact same.
Yeah. And you could truly
Exactly.
just, totally let it get out of control. It's one of the few things I consider myself a pretty disciplined person in general, but not when it comes to books. Like I honestly am wondering, where is this going to stop? Because now, of course, as a blogger, I get people sending me books. I'm so grateful for that. Honored that I get, and of course I buy my books. And
I need to start blogging.
That's one advantage. That's for sure. It's been a great advantage. So, but yeah, I no limit probably to how many books, if I had my druthers, that I would physically own. Can't talk to. My wife's gonna hear that. I can't let her hear that. But
you can use a PO box.
There you go.
There you go. Smart
You
thinking.
just push them through the window.
Cheers to that idea.
Oh, how did this get here? Wow.
Oops! It just fell out of the mail, honey.
It's so pretty.
Yeah.
It's so pretty. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Totally fine.
So
It could
Ryan,
be jokes, like I said.
we know that you were under the weather before you joined us, so we appreciate you. We don't want to take up too much of your night, but before we let you go, I wanted to ask you a question that I like to ask guests: is what was your first job?
I'm trying to think. I think I worked in. Trying to think what my first one was. I think I worked in a bar. I've worked at loads of places. So I worked in a bar. No, actually, my first job was working on the desk of my dad's hairdressing salon. That was my first job. He paid me €50 for the day, and I would stand there and take all the appointments, do all that sort of stuff. I went from there, worked in a bar, worked in a pharmacy, worked in basically everything. I know that's only 3 or 4 different jobs, but I have those. Yeah, that doesn't summarize everything.
I'm scared now because I just saw that come from Brandy. She's gonna kick me off because she says every time Steve does a paging episode. So, I'm sorry, Brandy. I'm sorry. She's gonna start blaming me.
I didn't realize who.
On my other monitor, I have Amazon up every time we do a thing, and I'm like, adding to the cart, and then so just
the only thing that gets me over here and it stops me, and actually I don't have as many indie books. I have them on my Kindle, but I don't have as many indie books in physical form as I'd like because it's just so fucking expensive to get them here. Like so expensive. And like I was getting some when I was in Ireland, but like even like when I wanted to get, say, Brandon Sanderson's Leatherbound Mistborn, all right, it was $100 per book, I think, so $200, and it was almost exactly the same for shipping.
Oof. Yeah.
That's my issue now, like because indie books are more expensive, and they're more expensive. I've explained loads of times because of economy of scale and because we do print on demand, and the per unit price is so much higher. Like you literally have to charge like $20 just to make 2. So that's the reason they end up higher. But like, fuck me, when you try and buy them on Book Depository and other places, it's like I'm looking at $60 for a hardback.
It's nuts. It's nuts. It's nuts.
That's why I'm so thankful for ebooks, because that's why I said I'm making a list.
At least, don't you?
Because I'm reading it now.
Does Amazon Japan do like Prime and like free delivery and stuff?
It does have Prime. Prime, but
it's so expensive.
And it really depends on if they can like print it here. Like there's some that
I think Australia
get printed, and then there's still a fee. So I really wanted to get Legacy of the Brightwash in hardback, but the price, I think it was almost $85 for it. So I was
when you get to the States, I'm sure Crystal will hook you up. She loves you so.
My poor parents, they have a whole other library in the States. So, you know, those leather bounds, it was the same price for me, Ryan. You know where they are? My parents' house. I was like, I'm not missing this. So my parents are lovely, and they're like, we'll put it in the closet, you know?
It's not just that difference once you're shipping outside the States. It's so hard to kind of grasp just how much it costs when you're shipping all the way over here. I think a lot of readers go between the UK and the States, and it's still expensive, but nothing like getting over here. Because we don't even have Amazon here. So we Amazon Australia is the closest one. So it's even more. That's fucking gross.
I cannot imagine.
Yeah, we have a business account with Canada Post. So if we're shipping, you know, overseas, we do get somewhat of a discount, but it's still, but you know, some people are worth it, and you know, some instances are worth it. Like you said, Ryan, you shipped out all those special arcs, and you know, you believe that it made an impact. So
now, one thing that I did is I switched all my stuff, all my signed books, over to the Broken Binding because they're lovely guys, and you know, it gave access to people in the UK. And I just, after shipping out all of Blood and Fire on my own and all of the fall number copies on my own, it was taking weeks out of my schedule. And I was just kind of equating it, being like, look, I'm probably going to have to stop this eventually because like I don't actually earn that much money from the number of copies. But it's taking a long time out. Oh, Jesus Christ. The States scare me.
I was going to say, don't bring that up to Ryan. He's not having it.
I have loved America since I was a kid. I've always lived there. I spent a lot of time in America. I spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania and New York and stuff when I was younger, when I was like 17, 18. But just now, it scares me. It's kind of one of those where you're kind of going, you just don't know what's going to happen. And, you know, I like that little bit of security for the minute. 99% of Americans that I've ever met have been like some of the most lovely people I've ever met in my entire life. But unfortunately, they're not the people who are making the rules at the minute. So that's the problem. Like, it's scary.
Well, nowhere to go. I also want to shout out quickly that he won't do it himself because he's too modest. But I'm pretty sure Ryan's series is like one of the top sellers on Broken Binding because, you know, every
We've
time
sold a few copies. We've sold a few.
Just a few.
We've sold a few. Yeah. No, the guys at Broken Binding are incredible, and they work really, really hard.
Yeah,
and I think sometimes a lot of people forget. They're like, oh, how come it takes so long to do this? Like they compare them to like a Lumacrate in Goldsboro, which is what they're getting into. Yeah. But the reality is, and this is really cool for me. I know Steve wants to go home. We all want to go home. But this is it was really cool for me. So the Broken Binding opened January, so 3 months before I launched my first book. That was when they opened. All right. And Matt runs it himself, and he's hired new people in, but he ran it from his dad's house, and like started off with like £100 and buying books and asking authors to sign them and sending them off, and just built it massively since then. But it's still run as a home business, which is crazy. And it's all done like all by hand, all himself, which is just absolutely nuts. And I think enough props doesn't get given for that. The amount of care and attention and detail that goes into it, the amount of special editions they're bringing out now. I know some people will compare it to like, oh, you know, it's £30 for this and £30 for a Luma crate. It's like, yeah, but like Albuquerque are a massive global business. They're taking in tens of millions all the time, and they get crazy amounts of books. Plus, I think what I love about the Broken Binding subscription is that it's very specific adult fantasy. Yeah. So I think Albuquerque stuff is top notch, but it varies so much.
It varies. It does.
Like I've seen it goes adult fantasy, YA, down to romantic fantasy, down to this, and it's great. But like if you're on a sub and you like, it's the reason I didn't get Brandon Sanderson's Year of Sanderson things, because I love Stormlight Archives, but I have no interest in Skyward. I think that's what it's called. Just because it's just not the genre I like usually. So I don't want to like buy a book that I don't know it's coming with Brandon Sanderson in a series I don't really know I care about. But like anything Stormlight, I'll buy. But it's that kind of thing. I think I like that Broken Binding have that. Like they have the Lacanius trilogy coming now, which is like has been done nowhere.
Cannot wait. Yeah. I cannot wait. Oh my god. Yeah, the Broken Binding sub is the first one that I actually was like, I have to get this. Because I was like, this is all my wheelhouse. You know, they market it
£30 a month is about twice what I pay on internet. Okay. But if someone said to you, I spent £30 this month on books, it's not a lot of books. Yeah. For people who buy books, it's not a lot of books. So I at the minute, like I'm not really buying a lot of books, but I just keep that rolling. And I get some great books coming out, and like I've chatted to Matt quite a lot, and they have some seriously good books coming. So it's a win-win.
Yep. Shout out to Broken Binding. Honored to be there on their store, and I'm sure, as Ryan said, he is too. So yeah. Anyways, I know we can't keep talking because we could keep going. So
if you want to buy PL's merch, just ask him.
It's not for sale right now, but no, it's not for sale. One day it will be, but it's just for special certain.
That's just your Tuesday attire.
Yeah, I'm slumming.
As soon as it goes live, let me know. I'm in there.
Yeah, I need some.
If you want, for you folks, if you want one, just
No, I want to pay you. So let me
I'll
know.
take the free one.
Friends, that's not what it's all about, friends.
Get out of here, Ryan.
I'll never say no to free shit.
You're still in the phase of in university. There's free pizza? I'm there. Right?
Wait, you think that's a phase? That's not a phase, it's a lifestyle choice. You meant depends I have taken in my life. It's free. It's like, oh, well, that's great, yeah. That'll fit in my bag. Totally fine.
Yeah. I am still guilty of taking the shampoos at hotels. Like I have I'm like, oh,
okay.
This is
hold on. You can't call it a phase when people offer you free things and you take it.
It's different.
You take things that aren't offered.
I can use it later. I'm paying for that room, okay? When I travel, that little mini bottle, I've used it countless times.
With that logic, you obviously take all of the minibar for free too.
No, I don't do that because they charge you
for batteries from the remote control.
The light bulbs.
That's a good idea.
Lamp is a no-no. Light bulb. Oh man. Sweet Jesus Christ. Yeah. That's
all right. Well, we should sign off, but before we do, we should probably get everybody's to shout out their socials, where to find them, and all that fun stuff, as Steve is always good at reminding us. So,
Ryan, you want to tell us where people can find you?
Yeah, this has been like my favorite. This used to be like my worst, like least liked question, but now I love it because whenever I talk about being successful, I found out like a few months ago that when you type my name into Google, I have like a Google profile and stuff that comes up with all my social media. So just type me into Google. That's really cool.
Nice.
I used to have a whole spiel where I was like, anywhere, just don't follow me on the street or whatever. But like now I just say, yeah, Google. That's really cool. I was like, hey mom, I'm on Google. Like,
I love that for you.
It's so cool. I get so like childlike about it. I'm like, but yeah. So yeah, just Google me.
Nice.
Oh, that's so cool.
You want to go next, Pia?
Okay.
I'm not in that level yet. Yeah, you'd probably find PL Stuart, but still. www.plstuart.com is the website. I'm all over Twitter, you find me on Twitter. And
In fairness, you're the first result.
oh, well, that's a good thing. I guess I must be doing something
Website
right.
straight away, Goodreads, Twitter.
Nice.
I must be doing. Well, that's because I hang with Steve, man. You hang with Steve and you get popular really fast. So
No.
hang with Steve and Taylor, and it's the company that I keep, right?
The
So
waxy, velvety voice of Steve Talks Books will sell anything.
Taylor's
I've
a
never
nice
heard
guy.
a voice described as waxy, but that kind of fits.
Yeah, because it's
I
like that
think
kind of
that's
smooth
Yeah.
kind of.
I think that's a
Yeah.
good thing, right?
Oh, it's a good thing.
Okay.
It's a good thing.
Yes.
I think when it's combined with velvety,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's like the argument between like damp and moist. And I saw it a while ago. It's like people are like, no, seriously. So hear me out on this. Hear me out, okay? So like the way the
I
argument
did
is,
not need to hear those two words.
seriously,
right?
hold on, okay? So people try and equate them, but they're not equatable, all right? Nothing good is ever damp. Nothing, okay? But you got a moist cake. That's fucking good, all right? And I heard a comedian once use the comparison, please don't kill me, okay? He was saying a moist vagina, all right? And his comparison was that could be perceived as good, but a damp vagina was never good. And I kind of went, that's horrific imagery, but I get what you're saying. Like, so moist can be good. Cake, go with cake. We can edit that last part out, can't we?
Okay. Just
No, you went in. You went in.
quickly
right?
go away
We're
from moist
here.
and damp. The last thing I'll do.
So like, it was a comedian who said it initially, and I just paraphrased.
There we
Give
go.
a quick shout out to the wonderful Beth Tabler who popped in earlier from Before We Go blog. Technically for Taylor, Steve, and myself, she's our fearless leader. And you can also find our reviews and content on Before We Go blog. And great blog site, currently one of the SBFBO judges, of which Taylor and I are on TV judges as well. And yeah, so you'll find lots of interesting stuff that's not necessarily moist and damp, but it's still good stuff on there.
I cannot believe I said moist vagina on a live broadcast.
And then I chose to use the phrasing in the comment below, just with that. Oh goodness,
Yeah.
two of us together.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
So,
No, it's okay.
this all came from your waxy velvety
yeah.
voice. So
Yeah.
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 What about you, Taylor? Where can we find you?
So just as that's the most casual way you've ever said that, like you've given up.
yeah.
You can find me,
Yeah.
as PL said, on Before We Go blog, also SPFBO Judge. So you can find my reviews for that there and on Goodreads. But if you want to interact with me, more frequently than just reading reviews, YouTube, my channel is Maed Between the Pages, which you can see here. I'm also quite active on Twitter. I go in spurts. So
Do you have an Instagram?
I do, but it's not bookish. So
Cool.
like I don't mind if
find
people
it earlier
follow.
to tag you, and I was like, fuck, I don't want to tag PL and not find you. And I couldn't find Steve either. I was like, I look at a dickhead who just prefers PL.
No, I don't mind if people follow me on Instagram, but it's not bookish, so the market's a bit different. But,
I've never had a social media except for Facebook that wasn't business. I've never had a personal social media for Twitter or Instagram or anything else ever, which is like
it's interesting. That's interesting, but I guess
Yeah.
in a way you might have. It might be nice not to have a footprint like that, like a digital footprint in the future. So.
like it's there. It's just all business stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
Steve,
that's where you can find me.
where can we find the man himself, Steve Talks Books?
So
We want addresses, Steve.
just
Yeah.
so you can you can find me at of course here on YouTube or pagechewing.com or the Before We Go blog website. I'm also on Twitter in spurts, just like Taylor is, and I'm also on Vero at that one MFer. That's me. I may change it to that waxy voice or moist versus damp, but I'm not sure yet.
I would love to hear you like narrate nonfiction books.
I've actually read a few short stories on the podcast that it's really difficult, and it takes me like 2 hours to narrate like a 5-minute short story. But it's fun. I'm never happy with it, but it's fun.
That's why I think nonfiction would be really cool because you don't have to change voices or anything, and you kind of just read.
Just very
let it flow.
dry and very dry and moist.
Do those two match? I don't
too
know.
Now
opposite.
dry,
See?
moist,
Yeah, exactly.
damp.
Exactly. Yeah. That was no good. Okay. All right.
As long as it's not bad.
This has been awesome. Ryan, thanks. Mainly, thanks again for, it's awesome for coming on. You're amazing. So thank you for
Yeah.
joining us. It's been fantastic having you here.
Blast.
And we will never have you back.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone.
Oh, God.
Bye.